Oando PLC has finalized its acquisition of the Nigerian Agip Oil Company, NAOC, from Italian energy major Eni for a sum of $783 million. This strategic acquisition marks a pivotal moment for Oando, significantly enhancing its presence in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. The deal, confirmed through a press release by the company, covers reimbursement and consideration for NAOC's assets. This move is expected to bolster Oando's operational capacity, particularly in the upstream segment, as the company continues to expand its capabilities in the energy market. Femi Oladehin, Senior Partner at Argentil Capital Management Limited, joins me for this. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
You can say that again. Oando PLC's final acquisition of Nigerian Agip Oil Company for $783 million is certainly a dream come true. Now, why the choice of NAOC, if I may ask?
So for Oando, it was a natural choice because what happened is that in 2014, Oando had acquired all of the assets of ConocoPhillips in Nigeria. Now, ConocoPhillips was in a JV or a joint venture with NAOC and NNPC. So ConocoPhillips owned 20%, NAOC as the operator owned 20%, and NNPC had a residual 60%. What has happened now is Oando has now acquired the owner of the balance 20% in that JV. And acquired it basically. So basically, effectively, Oando now owns 40% through different vehicles, obviously. 40% of the working interest in OML 6063, and it also then is the operator of that asset. So now was a natural fit for Oando simply because it's been in that asset for 10 years. It already knows the assets. It's been, the company has participated in all of the work that has gone into those assets in the last few years. And naturally, the next step for them was to step up to become operator. And I think that's quite a fundamentally good part of the story. The fact that a Nigerian-owned company, Nigerian-run company, is now the operator of one of the largest acreages in the Nigerian space.
Right. So talk to us about what this means for the company moving forward.
Oh, well, for Oando, it's fantastic news. So what in details, what they've acquired is about 500 million extra barrels of reserves in the market. Now, to put that into perspective, when they did the ConocoPhillips acquisition in 2014, they acquired about 489 million barrels of reserves on the ground, and they paid for about $1.5 billion for that particular transaction. Now, today, they're acquiring a larger reserve pool and also acquiring access to probably the most extensive infrastructure in the Nigerian oil and gas space. And they're doing that for a fraction of what they paid for it 10 years ago. So for the company, it's actually a fantastic transaction, bearing in mind it's been able to do this in the most difficult economic environment for Nigeria, and being able to add to its books now today over 1 billion barrels of crude reserves on the ground, and the capacity to be able to extract those barrels and turn it to cash. So this is a fantastic transaction for Oando, and I think it's good times for the company if they're able to extract value from this asset.
Interesting. So talk to us about how this is going to influence Nigeria's oil production, and of course, apart from that, we're also looking at its contribution to the national economy.
So look, from the production perspective, think about it this way. When the acquisition for ConocoPhillips happened in 2014, this asset was doing about 150 thousand barrels a day. As at last numbers, those numbers are significantly down to almost 20% of those volumes. Now, if you looked in the Nigerian market, that was probably the sort of numbers you were seeing across board. We know that production has shrunk from over 2 million barrels in the last 10 years to currently about 1.3, 1.4. However, the acquisition by Oando, especially by a local player, means that some of the issues, the community issues, the sabotage that were happening when these companies were being run by international IOCs who had no allegiance to the local companies, those issues can easily be resolved by a local institution. So I would expect that with an Oando as an operator, you will start to see production creep up gradually in this asset. Wells that have been shut in because of communal issues, this company can actually have access to it simply because they're a local company. They're able to speak the language of Nigerians, and they're able to get the Nigerian locals to see this as part of their own community. So for the Nigerian market generally, the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, this is another big step. We've seen a number of Nigerian companies acquire assets from the IOCs, divestment assets, and they've been able to extract value from that. We're showing that 10 years later, we still have the capacity to do these transactions. There are two other transactions that we're expecting to close imminently, which is, again, positive for the industry, positive for local capital formation. And we just have to look at this excitedly for the Nigerian oil and gas space. So this is positive for that industry.
Well, let's come to investors now, especially on the NGX. We've seen significant movement on the NGX. I mean, for a stock that began the year at a share price of 10.50 kobo, it closed yesterday at 18.20 kobo and has been moving in and out of suits category. It's either there today and then tomorrow it's not there. Like now, it's not there, right? Now, I can't remember the last time this stock sort of enjoyed such sentiment. I mean, what I know about Oando, there's always this issue with shareholders. There is issue with its releasing its results, not releasing the results, releasing results so late. I'm not even sure we've seen any 2024 results so far from Oando. But talk to us. What does this mean, really? What should investors expect?
So the Nigerian market is efficient. What you have seen the market do since the beginning of the year is suddenly start to understand what Oando's strategy has been for the past 10 years. Oando decided in 2012 that it saw into the future and decided that at that time they announced that they were trying to exit the Nigerian assets or their Naira earning assets and focus on the offshore assets, which is dollar earning assets. During that period, they had to make a number of very expensive bets. Some of those bets did not pan out the way they expected. So in 2014, shortly after the acquisition of ConocoPhillips, crude oil prices went from $100 to $30 by 2015. So of course, there were significant write-downs because of the entry price in that asset when they went into it. So the market obviously has punished Oando for those bets. Simply because the market turned immediately after those bets were made. And the market also did not understand that upstream space at that time, as well as the market understands it today. Now, bringing that into 2024, what you're starting to see is a company that has gone through very difficult times was suddenly emerging as stronger just based on the fundamentals. So you remember that there was a major shareholder issue in 2021, which required the SEC intervening, even though the company was able to come out of that vindicated. But that put significant strain on the shareholding of the company. And we're starting to now see numbers that show that the company is turning the corner. So I'm expecting that by the time 2023, 2024 results start to come out, their shareholders will start to see the benefits of all of these long-term investments starting to play out. And the market has already priced that in. So you've seen what an 8x type return already on the stock. At its peak, it was trading at about 95, 96 naira. We've seen some profit taken in the last few days. But that's standard. That's the way the market is. The market will probably retreat a bit. Buyers who missed out on the previous rally would re-enter into the stock and be waiting for significant news from the company. And I think that when you look at it from that perspective, you have to say that for the first time in probably 10 years, Oando shareholders are going to be looking at the stock and saying, we rode the storm and now we're benefiting. And of course, everybody now wants to share in that upside.
Wow.
But this is, I think local shareholders in Nigeria who have held Oando stock throughout all the difficult times must be smiling to the bank now and seeing the upside for them. And as you know, the market is always forward-looking rather than backward-looking.
Absolutely. I would have just said that they didn't have to wait this long. I mean, some persons wouldn't have bet on Oando. I mean, it's a good one to see what's happening now. So talk to us about... Absolutely. Talk to us about the significance of Oando's increased stake in the NEPL, NAOC, OL joint venture and how it will, contribute to its revenue growth and the future of joint venture projects in Nigeria.
So this is a big one. I think one of the most exciting things about this asset is that in addition to acquiring the production assets, they've also acquired a larger stake in some of the ancillary businesses. So what people don't realize is that the NAOC JV wasn't just an upstream JV. It also had 3 gas processing plants. It had a power plant that's almost 1,000 megawatts of capacity. It also has significant pipeline infrastructure and production stations. So that in itself is an asset valuation that the market hasn't even priced in yet, because 1,000 megawatts of power in today's market, if you looked at another power company that probably has the same type of capacity, it's currently valued at ₦1 trillion, just the power assets alone. And I'm talking about Geregu Power. So when you look at what Oando has acquired here, you are seeing a significant investment that they've acquired at a very good entry price, but the market hasn't exactly priced in the upside. And I think that's where the big incentive is for this company. If they're able to unlock value, improve the pipeline infrastructure, provide third-party processing services to other producers in the Niger Delta, then the Nigerian upstream business will start to reflect that benefit. So the Brass terminal, which is part of this acquisition, is a major export terminal for Nigeria, and a lot of Nigerian producers use the Brass terminal for their exports. But because of a lack of investment by NAOC and the JV prior to now, the Brass terminal hasn't been operating at capacity. Instantly, if Oando is able to turn that around and bring that terminal into full capacity, you see significant revenue jumps for them immediately, because people wouldn't pay a toll for processing their crude at the Brass facility and pushing it out. Then you then have the wells that have been shut in with limited production and limited investment. When there are re-entries into those wells, optimization of those wells, you expect that there could be potential jumps in production in that space. Now, Oando hasn't come out with any numbers yet as to what kind of production they expect in the next 12 to 24 months. So we'll wait for the company to make its announcements imminently. But what we expect is that there should be some optimization that comes in, which means that revenue would again continue to grow. So to answer your question directly, you could potentially see companies like Oando and the likes start to report significantly higher revenue numbers in Naira terms. Of course, again, they benefit from the devaluation of the currency because their revenues are in dollars, and by direct conversion into the Naira, there's significant upside for them. So for anyone who's looking at the upstream space in Nigeria, and by now, I'm not just talking about Oando, I'm talking about Oando, Seplat, and some of the fringe players who are looking to list on the market. This is a natural hedge for them against the weakening Naira. And anyone should be excited about this kind of companies coming to the Nigerian stock market and unlocking value.
You said something, if Oando is able to turn things around. I was going to ask you about it, but I said, we don't have all the time. So very quickly, let's talk about that Malta accusation. I mean, we know there is a press release to that effect, but let's hear from you.
Look, I mean, one of the things that I've learned as an investment banker, I've done this for 32 years, is that there's always going to be news and there is the real news. The whole story about Malta was a distraction for the company. It came out, and the timing of that announcement as well was in itself suspect. It was obvious that people knew that the ENI deal, the NAOC deal, was about to close, and naturally, people who did not believe in the company felt it was a good time to come up with negative news. The reality is that this is a company that has been very deliberate about its corporate governance, and it's been very clear, because if the company wasn't doing that, the storms it's gone through in the last 5 years would have killed any other organization. But this is a company that has prided itself and would try as much as possible to be at the forefront of corporate governance. It's obvious that the company has come out to deny it. Notice that story has simply disappeared simply because there was no truth to it. And I think that what we should be doing, especially as a country like Nigeria, is ensuring that false news acquisitions or false news information like that can actually destroy an organization, that there are consequences for people peddling it. You can't say things that could destroy a 1 trillion Naira company, and it's a lie, but you're still peddling it. I think that's just unfair, and there should be consequences for that type of behavior. And it doesn't matter which company is at the receiving end of it.
Thank you so much, Femi Oladehin, Senior Partner, Argentil Capital Management Limited. Thank you for your time and your thoughts on the show today.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure. Thank you.